Oh, that poor girl. I heard they had to close the casket because she was unrecognizable. Really? That's awful. She was such a pretty girl. What happened to her was just so horrible. Kimmy stood silently, listening to the two elderly women gossiping about her late older sister and best friend, Cameron. They were talking without a care in the world. She didn't say a word, not wanting to draw attention to herself in the tiny convenience store. Her heart hurt, but the anger inside of her burned so much hotter. She stood frozen, hiding behind a row of snacks, shaking as she fought the urge to scream. Did they ever catch the guy who did it? Yeah, they got him. Finally. Thank goodness. But it's still so tragic. The world's gone crazy. You can't even walk around without worrying anymore. Well, to be honest, that girl was always dressed so revealing. With those low-cut tops and short skirts, she was just asking for attention. That was all Kimmy could take. She felt her body shake with rage as she marched toward the counter. She slammed the bag of ranch-flavored Doritos onto the counter and shot a furious look at the two gossiping women by the refrigerated drinks. They froze when they saw her, the heavier one quickly raising her hand to cover her mouth. The thinner woman, the one blaming Cameron for what happened, gave a guilty smile before speaking up. Oh, hello there, dear. We didn't know you were in here. We were just talking about that awful thing that happened. Please tell your mom and dad that Mrs. Beverly sends her condolences. Kimmy stayed quiet. She couldn't trust herself to speak without saying something she'd regret. She paid for the chips, then walked out into the bright sunlight, using her hand to shield her eyes. It was warm, the start of summer. A soft breeze ruffled her wavy, dark brown hair as she took slow, steady breaths to calm herself. My goodness, she looks just like her sister, doesn't she? Yeah, she does. Another beautiful girl. Let's just hope she doesn't meet the same end, Mrs. Beverly added. Kimmy kept walking, the anger inside of her growing stronger with every step. These days, anger was the only thing she felt. It was always there, burning like a fire in her chest. She passed by Todd's hardware store, catching her reflection in the glass. Looking at herself was tough. She was the spitting image of Cameron. They both shared their biracial heritage. Light brown skin, hazel eyes, dark brown, wavy hair that flowed down their backs, long lashes, full lips, and hourglass figures. Beautiful girls, they were always called. But that beauty, as much as it was praised, had also made them a target, just like it had for Cameron, who had been murdered because of it. Kimmy was away in the city for college, trying to escape the small town full of gossip and ignorance. She was studying to become a photographer, and was excelling in her studies. She sent her family photos of stunning landscapes and people she captured with her camera. She had talent. One weekend, she decided to take a break and have some fun with her friends. She went out to a bar, where a guy tried to hit on her. She turned him down. He didn't take it well. He kept pushing, but she wasn't interested, and she kept saying no. Eventually, he became aggressive and was kicked out. Hours later, as she walked home with her friends, they split up to head to their separate houses. The man had waited for her. He followed her, attacked her, and killed her. That's how that beautiful girl died. She died at the hands of a man who couldn't accept the word no. She was only 21. And the piece of trash tried to claim she'd asked for it. He said she wanted it. She'd come on to him. Kimmy's body trembled with fury as tears began to form in her eyes. She walked home slowly to a house that no longer felt like home. Her 18th birthday was coming up next month. She'd already been accepted to a good university far away from the small town, where she planned to study digital art. Her parents had a breakdown. They'd begged her to stay and go to the community college nearby, but she couldn't. There were things she needed to do, things she'd planned. She hated the town, just like Cameron had. The people there were always in everyone's business, and they dreamed of leaving, exploring the world beyond. When she got home, her dog, Aries, greeted her excitedly. She rubbed his soft, black fur before heading into the kitchen, where her mom was quietly slicing green onions. Kimi threw the chips on the table and wrapped her arms around her mother's waist. She rested her head on her mom's back, breathing in her familiar scent. Her mom didn't say anything. She just kept slicing the onions, as if everything were normal. It had been a while since they'd really talked, especially after Kimi had made it clear she wouldn't change her mind about going to university. Her mom put the knife down and stood still, staring at the onions, before turning to embrace her daughter tightly, tears filling her eyes. "Please be careful," her mom said, her voice breaking into a sob. "Mom, you don't have to worry," Kimi answered softly. The weekend zipped by, and before Kimi knew it, Monday was here, kicking off orientation week for her and her roommates. She was jolted awake by Rachel's loud laughter. Still groggy, Kimi dragged herself out of bed and shuffled into the small living room kitchen combo. She greeted everyone politely as they hurried through their breakfasts. Scotland was sitting on the couch, sipping her tea and watching the morning news. As Kimi walked past the sink, she heard a report about a man found dead behind Club Pyrex early Saturday morning. The police were asking for anyone with information or who had witnessed anything to come forward. "That's horrible," Rachel gasped. "That's over on the other side of town, right?" Nana asked, munching on her bagel. "Yeah, it's in a sketchy part of town," Scotland answered, turning off the TV and getting up from the couch. "We should definitely steer clear of that place," Kimi said, washing her hands. "Agreed," both Nana and Rachel said at the same time. Kimi had her usual breakfast of toast with jam and some fruit while chatting casually with her roommates about the day's plans. They had been told to wear something comfortable yet presentable for the campus tour with other freshmen. The day's agenda included getting their official IDs, meeting with academic advisors, registering for classes, and lunch in between. Kimi forced a smile, pretending to be excited, but deep down she dreaded the whole thing. She wasn't a fan of big social events. Too many people were draining, and the thought of it made her anxious. After finishing her breakfast, she brushed her teeth, took a quick shower, and made sure she looked her best. She wore a mid-thigh plaid pinafore dress over an off-white blouse with three-quarter sleeves, paired with navy flats that her mom had bought her as a gift for university. Her hair was styled in two buns, with a couple of wavy strands framing her face. She added small diamond stud earrings, Cameron's earrings, to complete the look. She didn't need much makeup since she was naturally pretty, but she applied a little light eyeshadow and tinted gloss. She looked like a doll. As she admired herself in the mirror for a few moments, she noticed her large black purse sticking out from under her bed. She quickly shoved it further out of sight. Inside, the gloves with the fishing line were still in the pocket. She'd take care of them later. Her roommates also looked great, especially Nana with her runway-ready style and long braids. The campus was alive with activity, which Kimi hated but Rachel loved. Groups of freshmen were following signs to different areas for various activities. Kimi and her roommates knew where they were supposed to go, as they had already been assigned a group. They would join other students as they explored the massive campus. As Kimi walked briskly along, her small purse tightly over her shoulder. She couldn't help but notice the male students who openly ogled her and the other attractive women in their group. Predators are everywhere, Kimi thought to herself. The day dragged on, just as Kimi had expected. Now, she was on her own to explore the building where she'd be studying digital arts. She walked to the newly built, modern, light gray structure with a group of fellow computer art majors. As she walked, a light touch on her shoulder made her jump. She turned to see a tall, attractive young man with brown skin and deep, dark brown eyes holding out her lip gloss in his hand. "Oh, you dropped this," he said, his voice surprisingly deep and soothing. Kimi glanced down at her purse and realized she had left it open after putting in her new ID. The lip gloss must have fallen out. She smiled and took it from him. "Thanks," she said, slipping it back into her purse and closing it. The young man blushed, and they both continued walking toward the building, trailing behind the rest of the group. They stayed quiet as they entered, listening to student reps talk enthusiastically about the new building's features. The tour lasted about an hour before they were led to a large computer lab to set up their university emails and logins for the online platform. The young man sat next to her, sneaking a few glances. A student representative walked around, offering instructions on what they needed to do. "I'm Darian, by the way," he whispered to Kimi. "Hey, Darian. I'm Kimbrel, but everyone calls me Kimi," she replied politely. "Man, I'm kind of nervous. Today's been a lot to take in," Darian said, raising his well-groomed eyebrows. "I feel you," Kimi replied, typing on her computer. "We've got a few more days of this. Honestly, I can't stand crowds and all this social stuff," Darian admitted, looking exhausted. Kimi glanced at him for a second and smiled. "Same here. This whole thing is so draining," she said, relieved that someone else felt the same way. "Yeah, it's just unnecessary. They should just hand us our schedules, show us where to go, and call it a day," Darian said, turning a little in his seat to face her. "Exactly. I don't need to integrate with anyone," Kimi replied, rolling her eyes. "I hear you. I just want to get my degree and start making money," Darian said, his voice full of passion. They both laughed, drawing the attention of a few other students. They quickly ducked behind their computers, still chuckling. "We're getting lunch after this. Want to meet my roommates and me at the dining hall?" Darian asked with a grin. "Well, I'm supposed to meet my roommates there too," Kimi replied. "How about we all meet up? At least we know each other, right?" Darian suggested. "If my roommates are cool with it, I'm down," Kimi said, shrugging. Darian smiled and straightened up in his chair. He thought back to Friday when he first saw Kimi with her roommates. He thought she was absolutely stunning. His roommates had pushed him to talk to her, but he was too shy and nervous. He'd seen her a few times from afar, noticing how she stayed hidden and avoided large crowds. He was thrilled when he realized she was in the same department as him. He used one of his less-than-perfect skills to create an opening. Without anyone noticing, he quietly opened her purse and snatched her lip gloss. His hands were quick and slick. He smiled to himself, feeling pleased with how much kinder Kimi had been than he expected. Kimi didn't realize just how hungry she was until the rich, mouth-watering smells of cooked meats, fresh vegetables, and delicious sweets hit her as she stepped into the university's massive dining hall. The place was packed, with 4 lines moving steadily as students and staff scanned their cards, used vouchers, or paid cash before entering the buffet-style food area. Darian had brought along his roommates. Cody, a tall, lanky blonde with piercing blue eyes. Cien, a handsome young man of East Asian descent with dark hair, and Mason, a muscular brunette with glasses that partially obscured his soulful green eyes. The guys were all kind and a little shy as they introduced themselves to Kimmy's roommates in the busy dining hall. Rachel's eyes immediately lit up at the sight of the handsome group of men hanging around Kimi. She couldn't contain her excitement and flashed Mason a bright smile.
"So these are the friends you texted me about?"
Rachel asked, practically beaming.
"Yeah. Is it okay if they join us for lunch?"
Kimi asked quietly.
"Of course."
Scotland and Rachel responded at the same time, while Nana simply nodded in agreement. The group headed toward the food lines, vouchers in hand, and moved toward the buffet area. Kimi piled her tray with an assortment of different foods as Darian awkwardly followed behind her, making small talk. They all found a long table to sit at, where Cody immediately sat next to Scotland, sneaking glances at her every now and then as he ate. They made polite conversation, getting to know one another, while Rachel shamelessly flirted with Mason, making comments about his muscular physique. Kimi felt irritated by Rachel's boldness. Scotland seemed just as interested in Mason, bonding with him over their shared love for sports in high school. Cody and Rachel, however, didn't seem too pleased by their instant connection. Nana stayed polite, engaging with each guy equally, while Darian subtly redirected any attempts from his roommates to speak more seriously with Kimi. They all exchanged numbers before leaving the dining hall to meet with their advisors and finalize their schedules. To Kimi's surprise, she and Darian had the same advisor, whose office was located in the new building where their computer courses would be held. Their appointments were 30 minutes apart, so they decided to walk there together.
"So what do you think of the guys?"
Darian asked as they walked.
"They seem nice,"
Kimi replied, choosing her words carefully.
"Yeah, they are." "Your roommates are cool too,"
Darian said, glancing at her.
"They're all right. I kind of wish I could live alone, but oh well,"
Kimi said, shrugging a little.
"Yeah, I get it. So, have you decided what classes you want to take yet?"
Darian asked.
"I have to take some general education courses and a couple of intro courses,"
Kimi responded. Darian fell silent as they approached the building. They walked to the advisor's office, where a student was just finishing up. Kimi's appointment was next. Darian took a seat outside the door, watching Kimi through the glass. His heart skipped a beat as he stared at her, captivated by her profile. He couldn't hear anything they were saying inside, and it bothered him. He was hoping their schedules would match. He leaned in closer to the door, but the conversation remained inaudible. Just before her 30-minute appointment was up, Kimi stood, smiling as she walked out of the office, holding a piece of paper from Mrs. Cannery.
"You're done already?"
Darian asked, standing up.
"Yeah, I pretty much knew what courses I wanted to take this semester,"
Kimi replied, smiling.
"So what did you decide on, if you don't mind me asking?"
Darian asked, sounding a little shy.
"Oh, Mrs. Cannery suggested I take 4 classes this semester, 2 general education and 2 intro courses,"
Kimi said.
"Cool. Hey, can you wait for me? When I'm done, we can go sign up for our classes together in the computer lab,"
Darian asked, his voice hopeful.
"Sure,"
Kimi agreed, sitting down in one of the chairs. Darian took a quick peek at Kimi's paper and saw the words, "Design Principles," written on it. He walked into Mrs. Cannery's office and greeted the middle-aged woman, who was sipping from a mug of tea.
"Mr. Watkins, welcome. We're so glad to have you here at the university,"
Mrs. Cannery said warmly.
"I'm glad to be here,"
Darian replied, his nerves getting the best of him. He started coughing
and quickly raised his hand to cover his mouth. In his flustered state, he swung his backpack onto the desk, knocking over Mrs. Cannery's mug of tea.
"Oh my God, I'm so sorry,"
Darian said, his voice panicked.
"It's okay. Don't worry about it,"
Mrs. Cannery replied, standing up.
"Let me grab some paper towels."
As she stepped out to clean up, Darian looked through the glass at Kimi and smiled at her. When she turned back around, he quickly got up, crouched low, and grabbed the file with her name on it. He opened it and scanned the handwritten list of courses she had chosen. He quickly closed the file and returned to his seat just as Mrs. Cannery came back in. He helped her clean up, apologizing profusely for the accident. Afterward, they discussed his course options, and Kimi texted her parents to update them on her progress, while Darian left Mrs. Cannery's office, his face lighting up when he saw her.
"All set?"
Kimi asked.
"Yep. Let's head to the computer lab and enroll before the classes fill up,"
Darian said, adjusting his backpack.
"So how many classes are you taking?"
Kimi asked.
4, just like you,"
Darian said, smiling.
"Yeah, that seems like a good balance,"
Kimi said politely.
"I'm taking fundamentals of graphic design, design principles, geometry, and intro to philosophy,"
Darian said.
"Wow, that's exactly what I'm taking,"
Kimi said with a grin.
"Well, since we're in the same major, we should definitely try to sign up for the same courses. That way, we can work together, if you're okay with that,"
Darian suggested, his voice tentative.
"Sure, I'm good with that,"
Kimi said, narrowing her eyes slightly, a small smirk playing on her lips.